Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Delonte Woods, touchdown! ISB! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. Today it is Wednesday, halfway point, hump day, October 18th. Thanks a lot for joining us here from high atop the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Appreciate you being with us. Dylan Sinn expected to join us from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Greg Doyle from the Indy Star will join us today. Kyle Nedrip off, so Greg Doyle is going to pinch hit. Plus, he has a couple pieces out worth talking about. One, that if you're an Indy Star subscriber in regards to Indiana football and their situation. And then previous to that, well, in lieu of Kyle Nedrip, he had a piece about the IHSA and their transfer rule process, which, you know, if you know anything about Indiana high school basketball and the IHSAA, it's been tougher. It's tougher to transfer in Indiana than it has been in the NCAA. And then there's the NCAA. That's always a topic point. Big doings going on the 14th. We'll talk about that as well. Kyle Schwarber, whoo, doggies. We'll talk about that, man. Ringing the bell twice. You can ring my bell. He putting himself in some select company. We'll talk about that. What does Indiana do if the Hoosiers do not land Boogie Fland and or Derek Queen? Just some scenarios to talk about. The NFL trying to extend their global footprint. You know, they've got 3 games in London this year, with 2 more coming in Frankfurt, Germany, and plans next year to either go to Madrid or Brazil. Could the Super Bowl eventually find its way outside of the United States? And that would be, I don't know if I would like that. Even though I'm not attending the Super Bowl, whatnot. So plenty to get to, of course, as basketball decisions looming ahead for Indiana, with Boogie Fland's decision coming on Friday at 2 p.m. And then just a few hours, 5 hours later, the beginning of the season with Hoosier hysteria starting off for Indiana. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com will be with us in the second hour today as well. So we've got plenty to get to, plenty to talk about it with John, the producer, along for the ride to keep us between the white lines, of course, and you guys. And we can't, as always, tell you how much I appreciate everybody. Fred from Easton jumping on Larry out in Las Vegas. My man, Larry. Larry, you've got to get us an address, because I'm going to get Pete to send out for right now for our weekly college pick'em winners, which for football, which we'll go over that. Hey, we'll carry this over to basketball as well. But just for the weekly winners, he's sending out these cool little koozies that we had made up for everybody. So, but Larry deserves one just because of the time difference. So we appreciate him. 5 lefts, as always, Jamie from Grand Rapids, Forrest down in South Georgia, Tony V up in Whitehall, Michigan, Kit from Mount Pleasant, Michigan, And I hate to spill the beans, John Boy, but I need to keep reminding you, because I need you to keep reminding me.
Mm-hmm.
But since there probably aren't as many people listening at this very second, they tend to join us a little bit in. Hey, Derek, we are celebrating this month our 1,500th show. 1,500 shows. I'll be honest with you. When I started way back in 2017, I didn't think I'd make it 20 shows. And I was actually listening to one from 2018 yesterday, John, that I found on SoundCloud, and Don Fisher was joining me, and I'm like, it doesn't sound too much different than today, which I was a little shocked, but I would love to find one back from early 2017 or 2018.
Man, that could be rough, wouldn't it? Or it could be great. Who knows?
No, I don't. I would not expect greatness. I would love to find the first couple, but they're not anywhere. We don't have those. We did not start using any kind of format to preserve them, because I was on just a single radio station then, and not on YouTube, not on all of this stuff. So
there wasn't a way to archive it back then, I assume.
Well, there probably was, but I didn't think, like I said, I didn't think I was worth archiving. So those are lost to the ages of time, but I'm kind of glad. I wouldn't mind having it just to laugh at myself. But yes, not only that, but 1,500 episodes. That's a lot, first of all. But we could not do it without each and every one of you guys. And I'm shocked, like I said. But we put the show on YouTube just 2 years ago in 2021. And John has not been with us since the beginning of 2017. Justin Kalin was my first producer. Did a fantastic job, does a great job. He's down in Southern Indiana. You can hear him still. He does play-by-play on a lot of games down there on the station that we originally started on. And so you got to give a shout out to Justin. And we started out on WXVW down in Southern Indiana, 1450, the Big X. I've got to get a shout out to Dugan Ryan, who actually came to me with the idea of doing a show, of starting a show. But so shout out to him as well. And I had a few producers in between. Well, this is not the official deal. I'm just kind of throwing this out there right now. We'll thank everybody. But there's so many people to thank. Every guest, every producer, but most importantly, every listener. That's what's blown my mind is you guys. And I continue to meet great people. Like I met Matt Murphy a week or so ago when I was leaving for Big Ten basketball media days outside of the Graduate Hotel, and just a happenstance meeting. And he's the guy that used to room with Woody his senior year. Went to high school with his wife Terry. Crazy stuff. But we put the show on YouTube 2 years ago. We've already gone over 2 million views. 2 million views. That is beyond nuts in my mind. But it's not just that. the number of views, it's when I started looking at the analytics, I just shake my head. I'm like, this is not possible. And I added up, where are and again, this is just since we're early in the show and not as many people are probably tuned in yet. We have had listeners or viewers from 50 states and Washington, D.C., 49 countries on 5 continents. And that, my friends, is absolutely mind-boggling. And I cannot thank all the people who are responsible for that. I am beyond grateful, and I cannot tell you, where is the analytics? I like to get over the stuff. Every now and then I pull it up and go through it, and it's crazy. Let's see. During that period, there have been, like I said, 2.1 million views. But here are the numbers that just are staggering. The watch time, total watch time, 319,000 hours of watch time, John. 319,000 hours.
It's wild. Whoa, whoops. As I throw my mouse away.
If we divided that by 24, how many days would that be? I mean, that would be like 3 years worth of 24 hours a day.
For sure.
We would love to see the subscriber numbers go up, because I do notice that the majority of listeners are not actually subscribers, which is also a little mind-boggling. So that tells me I'm not doing a good enough job of asking you guys that listen, that aren't already subscribed, to please just simply hit the subscribe button, notifications toggle, and the like button if you appreciate what we're doing. But above all, hit that subscribe button. We want to hit some we want to get our subscriber numbers up just to do it. And it's that time of year. We've got big news coming up, whether it's with Boogie Fland this Friday, of course, action that's coming up on November 14th that we'll be talking about, of course. The guest that we have, Andrew Barth. I need to double check with him, make sure he's available tomorrow. That will be in regards to Boogie Fland. He has crystal balled him to Indiana. He is a writer from the Northeast, from New York, I might add. So we'll have a conversation with him. Looking forward to talking to Dylan Sinn today, because yesterday Notre Dame athletics director Jack Swarbrick spoke to Congress, and we'll talk about that and much more. Thanks a lot for being with us. Indiana Sports Beat Radio is on the ride, back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. I'm going to grab my coffee real quick. I'll be right back.
I can't find the damn whatever it was I'm looking for. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. This is the NLCS, right? I hope that's right. I hope they check that.
All right, I'm back. Let me bring.
Hey, this is
Sinn in.
There's only 2 National League teams left, right?
Yeah, it's the NLCS. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I was like, is this the CS or still the DS? Or anybody left?
I've got both audio from both home runs if you do want to use that.
Oh, absolutely. Back to back would be cool.
Kyle Schwarber postseason baseball. Can you see Dylan Sinn? He's in stream.
Not yet. I got to get back to the camera.
Oh, morning, Dylan.
Morning, guys. How are you?
I'm doing
Can't
good.
find the camera, to be honest with you.
Trying some new coffee this morning. It's called Dead Man's Brew.
Ooh.
A little Halloweeny.
Oh.
It's actually named, or it's a coffee sponsored by a band that I like called Theory of a Dead Man. That's where the name comes from.
All right.
Hopefully.
Is it waking you up?
I just poured it, so I don't know how good it is, but
right.
it should wake me up. I'm hoping it does at least. All right, Jimbo. We're back in about 15 seconds.
$9. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Doyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. And couldn't be happier to have our good buddy Dylan Sinn in. How are you, my friend? From the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, especially for all of our folks up in Fort Wayne listening on 1380 The Fan. While I'm thinking about that, make sure you catch Caleb and Kenny in the morning there each day to get your morning started. They've got some tickets to Indiana football for the homecoming game this weekend. You can tie that into Hoosier Hysteria. They're giving away 4 tickets each day. Also, right after Indiana Sports Beat Radio, stick around for Brett Rump. He's got a pair of tickets each day to go see Foreigner at the Coliseum on October 24th. You heading up to see Foreigner, Dylan? Do you even know? You know who they are, at least I know.
I do know who Foreigner is. I don't think I'm going to see that show, but you never know. Maybe I'll call in and get the tickets, and we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Hey, if you do and you don't want to go, send them to me. That was one of the first. I was talking yesterday. Let's see who I forget. It may have been with Mike. But and I forget what artist we were talking about, but I said that was my first, and I started laughing because you might not even know what this is, 8-track tape that I had for my car. But I think Foreigner may have been it, that with urgent, so urgent, and then there's another song on there. Anyway, that was the first, like one of the first 8 tracks I ever had in my 1974 Chevy Nova, baby. How's Dylan Sinn doing?
I'm doing very well. It's we're getting into the meat of preview season for basketball. We're rolling out with football, so this is kind of the busy time of the year for me, but it's also the fun time, so I'm excited.
Well, Texas A&M, I've been wondering why they haven't been powering so well, but it seems like they certainly have the fuel and all the gas to go. Is Taterology pointing out that there's a story about their new strength and conditioning guy using a grain-based nutrition program, and it's giving the team major gas issues.
I had not seen that story personally. That is interesting.
Well, just watch the movie. All you have to do is watch the movie. Oh my gosh, Blazing Saddles.
Oh yeah.
When there's a campfire scene when they're all they finish eating beans. But that's interesting. And you know what else is something interesting that brings up off the subject? But I thought about this just the other day when Indiana lost their duo to Alabama.
Yeah.
I can't think.
Matt Ballou was
Matt Ballou and the doctor.
I can't remember the doctor's name off the top of my head.
But I've always wondered why they didn't bring in another guy like the doctor was to work with their strength and conditioning coach. Instead, they jacked up the strength and conditioning coach's salary, but didn't bring it. I mean, I don't know what they did, but there's never been an announcement that that's what happened. But
yeah, I mean, they went out and hired. Like that was the thing is at the time they made a really good hire for.
Brought in.
They brought in Aaron Wellman, who had a
Giants
from the Giants. Yeah, he's also from up my way. He's a West Noble guy from Ligonier. But
Indiana guy, huh?
Yeah, he
Very
is.
Cool.
Yeah. And so at the time it was a really good hire, but boy, they just have so many injuries. It seems like every week it's some kind of random, this guy's questionable, this guy's out that we didn't even know was hurt. It didn't get hurt during the game, got hurt in practice. It seems like a lot of those, and I think every team has those, and every team's like, well, why do we get to have so many injuries? I think that's just football, but it just seems like IU has a lot of those. And so you start to wonder whether there's something going on where they have strength and conditioning is making them vulnerable to these kind of injuries, whatever they're doing with their weight training program or something like that. Because it's happened over and over for the last couple of years. So obviously, every football team has injuries. That's just kind of how the sport works. But it seems like every week for IU, there's a couple of guys where, we didn't know he was hurt, and then he's out or questionable and not healthy. So it's just always been interesting.
Well, now Indiana, not to talk about them very long, football has another quarterback race, controversy, whatever you want to call it. And this one is going to be three-headed because now here soon you're going to have Dexter Williams in this. And I'll be honest with you, I don't understand how that's even a part of the equation. I understand that he gave them this spark that beat a lowly Michigan State team last year and may have had Purdue on the ropes in the beginning. But how in the hell can you be a complete football team if you do not throw the ball? And he threw all of 2 passes in that Michigan State game. And I believe both of them came in the last minute of the game, or one in I can't remember, but it was like at the very, very end. Yeah. There's no way I think that you can run against these Big Ten teams like that.
My guess is that what they end up doing is they end up picking either Jackson or Sorsby as the quarterback going forward. And then when Sorsby, I don't know. I
said I've got to stick with it. I said it to start the season, and they ended up going with Jackson, but that's because they had to go with Jackson. It had to be Jackson.
Jackson has shown plenty though. Like it wasn't like they went with him because he's the legacy. To be clear, I have come around on the idea that both of these guys are actually pretty good, and they're just not getting good. I agree that they're just not getting good, put in good positions. I like Sorsby too. He has some arm talent. He can move. He can actually move better than Jackson does. Jackson.
I think he's just a little more accurate. That's the only thing. I think that they're both great, but I think Jackson has had way too many big time misses. The wide open Jalen Lucas, the passes, the multitude of passes that have been too high, the picks. He's just had accuracy issues that I think are fixable, but not right now. And that's why I think that it should be Sorsby, but Sorsby hasn't had the reps with the number one. He hasn't, he's been sitting back, and had he been going up, I think he would have improved to a point to where Indiana would be in a position that they could possibly challenge these remaining teams minus Penn State and
that's it.
That's all they've got left.
Are against bottom feeders in the Big Ten. Like, there is no reason that Indiana should not be able to go get 5 or 6 wins this year based on the rest of their schedule.
There wasn't.
There wasn't. And it seems like that's not going to happen. And that's a pretty big indictment of what's going on there. But to go back to I forgot what we were talking about now. That's my fault. But no, Dexter Williams. What's going to happen is they're going to choose one of the quarterbacks, and they're going to have a package of plays for Dexter Williams where they have him play quarterback, and it's going to be 90% running, and then every once in a while you throw in a pass just to keep things off balance. But I don't think he's going to challenge for the starting job, but I do think they're going to throw him in there for some plays just to kind of give teams a different look. There's going to be a package of plays for him. When I was in 2021, Notre Dame had Jack Cohn as their starting quarterback, but they had Tyler Buckner, 5-star freshman, who could really move as a backup. And so what they did was every week they ran Tyler Buckner out there for about 7 or 8 plays, usually a series or 2, just to give defenses a different look and make them spend part of the week scheming for it. And Buckner wasn't good, but he made some plays on the ground. He made an occasional throw through the air. I think that's what we're going to see with Dexter Williams would be my guess, is he's not going to start, but they're going to have some plays for him. And I think IU will be better for it as long as Rod Carey figures out a way to make it so that it's not obvious that every time he comes into the game, they're running the football. You know, have him throw 1 or 2 play action.
That's going to be hard to do, though, because unless they actually throw the ball, and then if you're only doing it to keep the defense honest and it's not successful, that's but kind of a waste of a down.
It is, but he's such a good athlete. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to make something work with him in the backfield there.
Do you know who has not been utilized by Indiana's offense this entire season?
Who?
The tight ends.
Do they have any good ones?
Do they have good enough tight ends? I promise you they can catch a 10-yard pass.
They can.
Hell,
they can.
I can still catch a 10-yard pass. I'm not going to go very far, but I can run, hobble, 10 yards, turn around, and it's just got to be a timing pass, a slant pass, quick pass, 4 or 5-yard pass, whatever. Utilize them.
Right.
They have not utilized them one bit. It's either been deep ball or nothing, or flats.
And to be fair, it makes a lot of sense that they do that. And I'm not saying that it makes sense they don't use the tight ends, but it makes sense that a lot of their passes are deep because the strength of their team is the wide receiver group. That is the best position group on the team. It is not the worst thing in the world for them to say, all right, just throw it up there and let Cam Camper or Omar Cooper or Donovan McCulley go get it. Those guys can go get it. That's one of the strengths of the team.
That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, but it hasn't worked as often as you would like, obviously, especially against Michigan.
Neither has much. No. But so yesterday, you cover the Notre Dame program as well as Purdue and Indiana.
I do.
Notre Dame AD, athletic director of athletics director. I hate when people say athletic director. How can you be the director of athletic? It's athletics director. But Jack Swarbrick, long time. How long has he been the AD at Notre Dame?
Since 2008.
Oh, not as long as I thought. I thought it was even longer than that.
Yeah, and this is his last year.
Either way, from the school that has no bend in much of anything, boy, he sure seemed to take the piece of steel and bend it like Lou Ferrigno or something yesterday as he appeared before Congress and says, I'm not sure where he said this, but
it was in a press. What you're saying is he was in a press kind of like scrum afterward.
Okay. Collective bargaining is I forget where I didn't write his quote down, but I wrote down collective bargaining could be coming to a school near you, basically.
Yeah.
Which I don't see any way around it.
I think that's, and I said this yesterday, I think that that's where we're headed. I don't really see, I agree with you. I don't see a way around it now that they've opened the door to NIL, which, to be clear, I think is good. I think that is a good thing. I think the players deserve to be compensated for what they're doing. They bring in so much money, et cetera, and so forth. We all understand that. But now that you have opened that door to players getting compensated the way they are for, and obviously there's still no pay to play, there's still no all of that, but at least above board. But there is going to have to be a way to kind of rein in some of the bad actors in that space, I think, and make it so that these guys have a little bit more certainty.
But I haven't heard a ton of this other than people like John Ruiz, who is just personally bankrolling the Miami Athletics Department to the tune of $10 million a year that he's spending of his own money. And I can tell you right now, a school like, let's say, Indiana, does not spend that in totality with their NIL.
Sure.
And they have a pretty damn good NIL program going. Hoosiers for Good is probably the second largest, maybe third largest NIL program that there's going. Kansas would probably be a little bit in front of that. All the others are football driven programs. And then we've seen, I don't know who it was last week, but now Utah, everybody, you get a truck, you get a truck, you get a truck. Everybody's handing out trucks, baby.
Well,
how about
clear,
hey, I'm like Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers. Hey, if you want to throw an extra truck my way, I'll take one.
Now, to be clear, and they mentioned that at the congressional hearing yesterday, the trucks are leased, first of all, and you only get the truck as long as you're on the Utah team. So you don't get to keep the truck if you transfer. So that's important.
Who in the hell is going to buy that damn thing after these guys go through them for 3 years? Are you kidding me?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. But no,
thank you.
So basically, I do think that there has to be some kind of, hey, when these kids get a deal, it's guaranteed. There's contracts available that these guys can't just back out. And you haven't heard a ton of that. My guess is it's happening more behind the scenes. Because there are some guys in this space, some groups in this space that are not quite on the level, would be the way I would put it. And so it's not just for the school's benefit, it's not just for the collective's benefit, it's for the players' benefit too, to have some certainty about what you're getting with these guys. And I do think there needs to be some kind of a reining in of the excesses of that. And so the question is, how do you do that? And what Jack Swarbrick basically said yesterday was they're still very averse to making the athletes employees. He doesn't want that. To be clear, when he said collective bargaining, he wanted collective bargaining essentially between conferences and schools and players, basically. He doesn't want the players to become employees. That was his whole thing. But basically, he believes that there should be some kind of, we bargain together to figure out how much these guys deserve. And I think that is a pretty big step from the athletic director of Notre Dame. And now the thing with Jack Swarbrick, as we just talked about, he's been there forever. He is on his way out. Notre Dame has hired a replacement athletic director. Jack Swarbrick will leave sometime in 2024. Basically, the new guy is coming in and apprenticing for 8 months to a year.
Apprenticing. Love to hear that word when it comes to an athletics director who is going to oversee one of the most famous athletic programs in the country.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what it is the guy does not have a college athletics background. He's coming from, he used to be the head of NBC Sports. And so he's coming in, and this is kind of off topic of what we're talking about. He's coming in because Notre Dame's contract with NBC for football is up following the 2025 season. And so this guy is coming in as Notre Dame's kind of ace in the hole to renegotiate a better contract for Notre Dame. I think that's pretty obvious. It's pretty transparent. And he is a Notre Dame alum himself, so he knows a lot about Notre Dame. but he is not. He does not come from the college athletic space, so he's kind of working with Swarbrick as a special assistant for a year before taking over the big job. So my question is,
which actually I think is a great, smart benefit if you have someone like Jack Swarbrick, but that doesn't always, may not always be the right person to tutelage under. Not saying that he isn't.
Right.
He is.
Oh, sure. But no,
I'll leave it at that.
Right. And so I guess my question is, if Jack Swarbrick's on his way out, would he have said this if he were not on his way out? If he were going to be the athletic director in 4 years, would he have said this? Is this something that Notre Dame's administration believes, or is this Jack Swarbrick shooting from the hip? I don't know the answer to that. Notre Dame has also just announced that its president is stepping down next year. So they're going to have a new president of the university. I wonder if when they go through the hiring process, are they going to hire a president who is on board with collective bargaining for athletes? I don't know. And I think those are important. That's important context to what Jack Swarbrick said. It is very important that the Notre Dame athletic director, who has written multiple times about it, we don't want pay for play in college sports. He wrote about Jack Swarbrick himself wrote that in the New York Times in an editorial last year. We don't want pay for play in college sports. And now for him to come out and say collective bargaining might be the way to go here, that's a pretty significant step. I don't know if it's Jack Swarbrick taking that step or Notre Dame taking that step. And I think there's an important distinction there.
Well, Notre Dame has always considered themselves above the rest of the college sports world,
Sure.
rightly or wrongly. I think that's wrong because they're not. This is not the Four Horsemen, and Newt Rockne is not walking through the door. Not that they are not a beacon. They are, but I think that they get a lot of bonus behind votes, behind whatever, because their name is Notre Dame. There's no single team that should be allowed to be eligible every time. I got so sick and tired of hearing, well, it's the Power Five and this and that plus Notre Dame. I got so sick and tired of hearing that. I'm like going, that's BS, but that's a whole different story. And I think it's also part of Notre Dame's continued, but maybe starting to be battered fight of remaining independent.
Yeah.
Which that independence has become a joke. They play half the Big Ten in football. I mean, they've got Purdue on the schedule next year, and USC's already on the schedule. Whom else do they have on?
I mean, remember they have that series scheduled against IU in 2029 and 2030. They're coming to Bloomington in 2030, right?
I'll be in a wheelchair by then, probably. I don't know, but that's my point. Is they keep scheduling more Big Ten teams. They're
not Michigan though. They haven't played Michigan since Michigan won by 4 touchdowns in 2019. Don't forget.
Yeah, well, we'll see. What's up next for you, my friend?
I am this weekend. First of all, I have speaking of Notre Dame, I have kind of their midseason review of Notre Dame out on journalgazette.net right now. Kind of talked about where they stand as they get to their bye week. I will have the same for Purdue later in the week. I'll have a story on Indiana, and we talked about the quarterback situation there. I'll have a story on that tomorrow. This weekend, I will be up in Chesterton. I'm covering high school soccer. We have three high school soccer teams playing back to back in the semi-state, so I will be there for that. So very excited.
No Hoosier hysteria for you?
No Hoosier hysteria. We have sectional football, so I'll be covering that as well. Although, of course, I will have, and we didn't talk about this a whole lot, but I will have a story on Boogie Flan's commitment from Friday afternoon, whichever school he ends up picking. So I'll have that as well.
Appreciate you, brother. Make sure you give him a follow, especially those up in the Fort Wayne area listening on 1380 The Fan. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Back with Greg Doyle from the Indy Star right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Greg Doyle's at 9:30, not next, but it's okay.
Oh, okay, perfect. I got a little confused. Can you
I thought you were
imagine
going to
that?
take him a second segment. I wasn't trying to rush Dylan out, but it is
No.
what it is.
Yeah, I'd like to have gone a little longer with Dylan on that.
You can do the
But
Schwarber stuff if you want.
I've got so much to talk about.
Yeah. Did you see the Philly security guard had to body slam someone who jumped in the outfield last night?
I did not. Is there audio to it? Do they describe
I might be able to
it?
get video of this. No, let me see if I can get some video to it. You can, if you want, you can describe it. If it's, let me see if I can get this. It's hilarious looking though. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is
now
fantastic.
my favorite thing is yesterday. Rick Bozich. Oh, and he's on today. He reposted that fight between the Chargers and the Cowboys fans. Anyway, it was out on like the mezzanine area. They're all slipping and sliding on the beer. It was so funny, but it was an all-out brawl. But the first thing I think of was when I was a kid. NWA Championship Wrestling with Lance Russell and Dave Brown. They had this brawl in Tupelo, Mississippi. There was actually ended up being a couple after that, which is crazy. But it spilled over. The first one started after the show. They're off, and you can hear Lance Russell, we got to go. We're out of time. And so as soon as they do that, but you see, Jack, keep the camera rolling. Here, follow me. Can you get out here? There's a hell of a fight going on. And you can hear this. You can see nothing. And finally, you see a little camera spot looking down over the concession stand area. And he's like, what you're seeing is they're in a concession stand fighting. Mustard, the whole deal. It was great.
Oh, looks like Greg Doyle is ready to join us. Here he is.
Oh, hey. How are you, sir?
Good morning.
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Great.
We'll be back from break in just a couple of seconds, Jim. Just
good. Okay. For future reference, I might be the only guy this ever happens with, but you should let someone know. Check email. You know, I'm thinking it's a phone call. I have no idea. So.
Okay.
To you guys. But, yeah.
All right, here we go, guys.
We don't all do the normal stuff.
Partner of Wow Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway of the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Normally, Kyle Denrup sitting in with us, getting you up to date on what's coming up in high school football. But right now, he's on a little hiatus this week. But how about Greg Doyle filling in? And kind of perfect timing, Greg, because originally when I reached out to you, you had a piece out on the IHSA and their history of transgressions with transfers and whatnot. And then you had a second piece, which we'll talk about later. So it kind of parlayed right into that. But the IHSA first, they have been harder to deal with at times than the NCAA. And that's hard to say.
Yeah, the IHSAA, in theory, they're here for our kids, and they do a lot of good things for the kids. They do. The state we have our state championships. It's just important for me to say this. Otherwise, it looks like I have an axe to grudge, or a grudge to axe, or I have both. But they do great things. They do. But this one thing they do happens 10, 12, 15 times a year, and it's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable, and they don't see it. And no matter how much I write about it, they don't see it. I had an interview for the story that you're talking about. I sat there for 45 minutes with IHSA leaders, and their PR people and the principal up at Delta who's on the executive committee. And I didn't know it was going to go this way, but when I sat down, Paul Neidig, the commissioner, says, "Greg, tell us your concerns." Wrong question. I spent 45 minutes chewing him out and taped it and then sent it to my boss, transcribed it and said, "Listen, this just happened. I just spent 45 minutes chewing out the IHSA commissioner. If they complain about my, behavior, hear it for yourself. Here's what happened." So, and then I wrote what I wrote, which was actually the story that you read is so much nicer than what happened in that room, because I walked out of that room and frankly got a phone call. This is behind the scenes stuff, but I got a phone call the next day from an athletics director that I respect a lot, who didn't know anything about my interview with the IHSA, but he knew I'd been writing about them, and he agrees with me. But he said, just make sure that you're aware that they do good stuff in the state, and I would hate for that to go unmentioned. And he told me that, and my little grinchy heart grew 3 sizes. I realized you're right. They're not awful all the time, and maybe if I acknowledge how good they are most of the time, it'll give more weight to the fact that, yeah, but over here it's just unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Indiana has the greatest high school basketball tournament in the history of high school basketball. I mean, from dawn of time until now, unless you're which side of the class system you fall on. But there's a lot of good things, like you said, a lot of great talent that comes out of here. But I have seen so many times over the years where how they've treated transfers, and even Kyle Nedrip has documented several of the stories where a guy or a kid seemed to be completely do the things he's supposed to do, but yet they take a year away from them. And man, losing a year in high school is like losing 5 years later in life, to me.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not like we all know there are illegal recruiting. Kids are recruited, and that shouldn't happen. We all know that. But what we also know is that you better be sure about that. The IHSA goes into these things, and this is a fact. They go into every transfer case they look at as you're guilty until proven innocent. They want to make sure you're not guilty. So it's not innocent. Someone's got to prove you're guilty. No one has to go in that room and convince the IHSA they cheated. No, you're in there because the IHSA has already convinced you've cheated. Now you tell us you didn't. And there's so many. I mean, I've dialogued there. I've documented it several times. I mean, some of these cases, I'll just leave it this. They absolutely blow your mind that they can look at these facts and decide, nah, you're ineligible. The one example I'll give you really briefly is that a kid at Indian Creek, his sister's 15, special needs. She was being flirted with on Snapchat by a coach, not the head coach, but by a football coach on the high school team, was flirting with her on Snapchat. The guy's 44 years old. She's 15. That triggered some anger in the player, as you can imagine. That's his younger sister. Triggered some anger. He wanted to transfer. On his way out, may have said a few things like, "I can't wait to play you guys. I'm going to take out some knees," or whatever. I get that, but that's just I'm going to forgive a 17-year-old for blowing off steam.
Absolutely.
And he even offered when he transferred to Greenwood, "I won't play against my old school. Let me play. I'll just sit out that game." The IHSA said, "Nah, you're transferring for sports reasons." You mean a sports reason to get away from the coach that was hitting on my sister? I guess that's a sports reason. The logic they have, and by that I mean zero, can be baffling. And I'm sitting there with Paul Neidig telling him that. And every time he would say something, I would say, "I see what you're saying, and I raise you a 44-year-old assistant coach sexting with a 50-year-old girl. Call." He folds right there, but behind the scenes, they're all tough, and they're saying, "No, you're ineligible." They hope that people like me and Ned and Rip don't find out and write these things. That's what they hope. But now we are. And in this story, the biggest part of the story, really, the only part of the story, the reason for it, is that I've talked to the governor's office, the Department of Education, multiple lawmakers at the State House, and it's, whether they're saying it publicly or not, it's unanimous. They don't like how the IHSA does these things, and they would like it to change, but change unless the State House can write some legislation, and there's some in the works. Change comes from within the organization, just like the NCAA. Only the presidents can change NCAA. People think that whoever the president of the NCAA is can come in and he can just change everything. No, he can't. He can suggest things for the presidents to write, and then the NCAA can vote on it, and the presidents can vote on it around the country. All the NCAA does is enforce the rules. The IHSAA should be that way, but because they got everybody under their thumb, no one's writing rules to change them because high schools are afraid of being lashed back in response by the IHSAA. See, in college, the NCAA, the presidents, they answer to Nike, okay? They answer to Nike and places like that. In high school, they don't answer to Nike. They answer to the IHSAA. It's the exact opposite of the way it should be.
Yeah, you mentioned NCAA enforcing rules. I was thinking, yeah, they enforce the rules they want to enforce, and don't want to get into all that. But Kansas is the most recent example of that. Dan Wetzel, I reposted a great story by him yesterday, so go read that if you want to see more of what I'm talking about. But now the lawmakers are getting involved. The NCAA has moved to the one-time transfer rule, and there's even some controversy this year about that when a guy, Tez Walker at North Carolina, but they finally said, okay, we made a mistake and let him play, yada, yada. But now the IHSA, the lawmakers are looking at trying to do something similar to this.
Yeah, there's some states have a one-time transfer policy. West Virginia has that right now. That legislation was posed in Texas and shot down in the spring. I believe it's Florida. I didn't put it in the story, so because I don't want to write. I think, and I tried to find this out and couldn't. I think Florida has a one-time deal that after your freshman year, you can go anywhere you want as a freshman. You know, you can start any school you want. You start there, but you typically have to stay there. Well, in Florida, you can start where you want. And you got 1 year to realize this is not for me, and you can go somewhere else for free. So there are different ways of doing this other than the IHSA's Iron Fist, which says once you enter a school, you're there. You're there unless you can prove to us you're transferring for legal reasons. So there's legislation that is being written now by a guy up in Fort Wayne, Bob Morris, legislator, to say I want the one-time transfer for all these kids. And let's just see if chaos happens. Let's see. You can always go back, I guess, but what you can't do is give back a year to these kids that have had it taken. Like the Indian Creek kid, he's a senior now at Greenwood, not playing. He's really good. He was Indian Creek's leading tackler last year, undersized linebacker, the kind of kid that's not going D1. And if he goes to a school at all, it'll be a smaller school where he'll change positions. But he can play. You know, Wabash, DePaul, places like that are full of kids like this, but they don't get recruited if they don't play. And without a scholarship, he can't afford college. So the IHSA has effectively ended his high school and college career, and now this kid is going to make do with whatever he can make do with a high school education because he's not going to college. That's how important these decisions can be. It's why you just can't go, yeah, well, 95% of these kids are eligible, but what about the other 5? Not good enough.
And you mentioned, well, the board of the IHSA, where these things fall, is still part of the good old boy network, while they have added a couple of members that handle minority members, but they work on the board's website, and 2 female Caucasian women are on there, but it's all old white guys, basically.
Here's all you need to know about the IHSA and how it really doesn't even see what it is. It's, you know, I love self-awareness. You know, I love talking to people that kind of know what their weaknesses are. Because if you talk to someone, for example, Aaron Rodgers thinks he's the smartest guy in every room he's ever been. And you watch him on the McAfee show and he kind of leans back and he's all like, you have no idea what a jerk you are. You don't know. You don't know because you're Aaron Rodgers, you're rich, and people tell you you're great. And so you just don't know that for a neutral party, you're dislikable. Go get immunized or whatever it is you're doing. IHSA doesn't have any self-awareness either. They have no idea. I had to point out to them. I said, do you realize your board of directors, 18 members, on your website, you're proud of this. Of the 18 members, you have 2 black men that you put the word minority under to show people this is our minority quota, because it's a quota, 2. You've got 2 white women that you put female because this is our female quota, because you have a quota. The other 14 with no quotas to fill, 14 white men. You're 14 for 14. In other words, if we don't have to put a woman or minority, we're not doing it. I pointed that out tonight.
we've got to take just a quick break for a second, but I want to know, how do they continue to get away with this? Because this is not now. This has been going on for a while. When I was in high school, it was just accepted. Oh, you can't transfer. But now it has become something different. But if you just have a couple of minutes, because I want to hear more about it and your piece on IU yesterday. We've got Greg Doyle with the Indy Star with us right now. Make sure you go to the Indy Star. Always be a subscriber. I am. Keep local papers alive. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Sorry about the not knowing about the email, Greg. We're so used to everybody doing that. We apologize. We didn't send that notice to you.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, you didn't know, and maybe it'll never happen to you again. But
hey, I love the basketball, man. Where did you get the basketball? Behind you.
I went to a, I like the Milan story a lot, and so
love it. I love going to Whitestown Gym. Been there only twice, but love it.
I've gone to, like, not all their events, but I go to some events every now and then, and those guys have taken a liking to me because I've written about them a lot. I mean, why wouldn't they? They like. They're not egomaniacs or anything, but they like their story being kept alive as much as it can. So anyway, I went one time just to see them, and they were signing autographs, and they saw me in the back, and they called me up, and I jumped the line, and then they gave me a ball. Like, they all signed it. All the living members were there, and they signed it, and it was just very nice. I didn't even want the ball. I mean, I won it. That's great, but I was just there to say hi to them. So that's a beautiful thing. So I'm proud of that. Some people have on their, what do you call it? Glory wall, ego wall, vanity wall, whatever you call.
Yeah.
Like
trophy wall or whatever, something like that.
Yeah. And that's all the self-awareness I'm talking about is you get people that set up their Zoom and they make it a point to have all their awards and all their newspaper clipping, like Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten last year, whatever his name is. He would do Zoom calls during COVID, and there would be like framed stories about how great he was over his shoulder. That's what he wanted people to see. Like, do you not realize we see that, but I mean, and there are people that are weak, like, go, wow, look at that. Like the same people that like Elon Musk. Oh, wow, look at what he's doing. Yeah, he's an asshole. He's an asshole. No, he's not. He's rich. Oh,
as was, and I'm still thanking Kevin Warren for my consecutive trips to Minneapolis for Big Ten Media Days and a Big Ten tournament coming up. So I think about him every time I go there. As a matter of fact, this year I was walking by the Big Ten set and saying hi to one of the guys, and I'm like, oh yeah, here we are back here. Thanks to and he just stopped me. He goes, yeah, we'll just leave it at that, and I'm like, wow, I did not realize it really permeated that far that the Big Ten Network guys thought the same thing. I'm like,
yeah, Minneapolis is good. So, yeah, Minneapolis is a nice place to fly over, kind of like Indianapolis is, but to some people, I love it here, but don't assume everybody does.
Yep, it's
guys, 20 seconds. Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Ravesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Rusty Gator. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this hump day, October 18. Appreciate you being with us, as always. Fortunate to have Greg Doyle sitting in with us this week from the Indy Star. Of course, you know him as their lead columnist. Had a couple of columns out this week of great interest. First was regarding the IHSA, and quickly want to finish that up. Greg, how do they continue to get away with this? We just talked about the board is set a certain way that does not really seem to be made up of people who are open-minded, and yet nothing seems to change at the IHSA level.
They say in football coaching, everything that one team, the offense does, the defense should have a counter, and that the IHSA has a counter for every argument you make, including because I asked that, and they said, well, these board positions are voted on by the membership, and they are. I mean, it's an election. The IHSA, in their defense, doesn't appoint 18 people, 2 black men, 2 white women, 14 white guys. They don't do that. But they're open elections. Anybody can apply if they want to be voted on. But as I quoted in that story, and as I told Neidig, women and minorities have told me they don't want to run for positions they know they're not welcome to win. They don't feel welcome to win. Right or wrong, they don't feel welcome. How do you feel about that, Paul? And so, because he was saying, well, do you have people that want to run and don't? Yeah, I have. I've talked to them. I'm not going to quote them publicly because they don't want to put, as they told me, they don't want to put a target on their back. It's amazing how schools in the state are actually afraid of the IHSAA. They're afraid of whether it's fighting too hard for a transfer or trying to get on the executive board if you're not one of the 14 white men. They're afraid of putting, as I was told, a target on their back. I have a football, in the story I quoted him, didn't name them. I don't know how many Class 6A football schools are in the state, but there's 10 ranked in the top 10. One of their head coaches told me, it's in there, 100%, we're afraid of the IHSA. That is a ranked Class 6A football coach. If that's the mood around your organization, then your organization's broken. You need to make sure that's not the mood because people are afraid to challenge. So why does it get fixed? Everybody's afraid of them. That's why.
And that is amazing because I've never met Paul Neidig. I'm not spoken with him, so I have no take on him personally. But from afar, it just seems like either he doesn't get it or he does not want to get it. Let's just leave it the way it is and keep this machine rolling.
That's how the good old boys club is. You don't know. Do they not get it or do they not want to get it? It's some combination of two. It's just, it goes back to self-awareness. It becomes kind of a willing ignorance of you don't really know who you are. And even though people are trying, like I'm trying to point it out to you, and not just because here's my opinion, but here's what people around the state are saying. Here's what a judge said about your transfer system last year. I quoted that in another story. Here's what attorneys are saying about what it's like to go in that room and try and fight for a kid, how overwhelming it is. I mean, here's what people are saying about your company, but he hears what he wants to hear. And what he wants to hear is that his check for about $200,000 a year cashes.
I cannot remember the kid that it involved. It was a football player that I was speaking with Kyle Nedenrip from the Indy Star, that was trying to transfer because I think his mom's job had changed and his ride situation, it was making it hard on them. They wouldn't let him. And it just turned into a complete mess. And it was like, what are you kidding me here? These are common sense things, man. This was not a kid that was just trying to transfer to a school. So it stinks to see what they do to these kids. And I hope it does change. But that's up to the members. Like you said, the NCAA, while Mark Emmert seemed like a clown, and he kind of was, he was also at the behest of IU's president, of Purdue's president, of Notre Dame's president, of whomever. They're the ones that put those people in power. Who puts Neidig in power?
It's beautiful. The executive board does, but the executive board, you don't get on that board unless you're afraid of the IHSA in the first place. And then you get put on the board, and you got 18 people that are on that board, and they know they're on the board because the IHSA let them be on that board. And then, as I wrote in the story, there's a direct line that if you get tired of academia, because it's grueling. We all know being a principal is grueling. Once you get tired of that, a safe landing spot is you can go become an IHSA assistant commissioner when you retire from your school up the north or wherever. Go make $160,000 a year, which is a $50,000 raise at the IHSA as assistant commissioner. And then, like, they've had 9 commissioners in the IHSA. 7 of them got their start on the executive committee. It's a conveyor belt that no one wants to jostle.
Yeah, it's I don't know why, but the name Putin comes to mind of how he can maintain power there. Switching gears, you also had a story that came out yesterday, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, the 17th. I want to make sure because when I read that regarding Indiana football, and not that this is a secret, but Indiana football has really put themselves in a horrific position with where football has gone. One of the things regarding, if the desire was to move on from Tom Allen, they can't, because they have put themselves behind a contract that they can't afford to pay, which the golden rule was always to not give a buyout that you cannot afford. That's a position Indiana is in right now. And that we're about to enter into the new Big Ten, which is just going to exacerbate this situation.
Yeah, the irony is that a lot of folks say if IU football would only support, if the administration would only support the football program at IU, they do. That's why they're in this mess. They supported Paul Allen by making him at the time the 10th highest paid coach in the country, giving him about the biggest buyout in the country. They have poured money into the program. But they've supported it so well that they're now stuck. And when you get a coach, when you're an IU or a Duke or a football program, Kentucky, that historically doesn't win football, when you finally have a coach that wins, you keep him. You do what it takes to keep him, because if you lose him and have to hire Kevin Wilson again, you start all over. So that's why Purdue was so aggressive with Jeff Brom. You keep that guy as long as you can. Well, IU thought they had that guy in Tom Allen. Now, and I understand. Back at the time, I thought they had the guy too. But you look back now at the hindsight, and you realize, oh, that was Michael Penix that did that. That's who did, and Kalen DeBoer, who put the offense in, they did that. Because now DeBoer and Penix have Washington in the top 5. They're doing it up there. That's what they did, and they're gone. And it's kind of like when when Bruce Arians, when the Colts, when Bruce Arians replaced Chuck Pagano, and Pagano had leukemia and it was terrible. Arians replaced him, and the Colts took off, started winning. And there was like this Arians effect that lasted for a couple of years until it was gone. And you realized, oh, Arians is the guy they should have kept. Well, Kalen DeBoer is the guy they should have promoted, and Michael Penix they should have kept. But it's hindsight. You don't know. So now they're stuck. And as I wrote, and I didn't take joy in this, I didn't write Tom Allen needs to be fired. I didn't write that. What I wrote was Tom Allen's going to be fired. It's just a matter of time. You can all see it. It's not, there's not even an argument to be made. I didn't even argue. Like, here's the record. I didn't even put his coaching record in there. There's no argument. He's clearly overmatched. The question is, do you fire him now and spend $20 million, which you don't have, or do you wait a year, fire him next year, it'll cost $8 million, which you don't have either, but still it's less than 20. Those are two options. But so how much money do you lose by keeping him this year, one more year? That's the question. You're going to lose money either way. Are you willing to lose whatever you lose, including your stature, your momentum, your place in the Big Ten? How far are you willing to sink, in other words, before you go ahead and do the inevitable and fire the guy?
It's not just money they're going to lose, because I don't know how much money IU football makes outside of the money they get from the Big Ten compared to, say, an Ohio State, Michigan, who's making like $6 million a game. They make more in a single game than IU makes in football all season. But it's not just money, it's players. I'm wondering how many players they're going to be able to hold on to, valuable players. And they've also lost a ton of coaches, assistant coaches throughout this tenure. It's been a combination of bad hires and refusal to fires for me. For a long time, I really thought when they replaced Kalen DeBoer with Nick Sheridan, I was like, that is the dumbest thing in the world. That position was red hot. You could have hired anybody in the United States and not did what I called the good old boy thing and did that. But looking back, I don't know how much it was Nick Sheridan, or more importantly, it was Tom Allen's refusal. And I love Tom. He's a great guy. And I hate saying these things as well. But it was his refusal to fire Darren Hiller, who was an absolutely god-awful offensive line coach, which was destroying his football team, but he still would not make that decision until he was forced to and had to pay out of his pocket to do it.
There are so many parallels to the Colts because Pagano made bad. Look at all the offensive coordinators he hired that were terrible. Defense coordinators were terrible. And then, that's it. Allen, same way. Pagano had a terrible judgment, not of character necessarily, but just of coaches. It was good old boys. He knew these guys, so he brought them in. Allen, same thing. Knows guys, brings them in. Knows guys' fathers or sons, brings them in. And he's in this position he's in now. And I would go into this in the story more in detail, but you wonder about his character judgment when he spent 6 years alongside Hugh Freeze. And Hugh Freeze is not a guy that you look back on and say, wow, I didn't see that coming. Hugh Freeze is a guy that if you spend 10 minutes listening to him, you can tell that he's not what he says he is. Now, if he's your coach or you're trying to make him your coach and he wins games, it's like that self-awareness thing I was talking about. You don't see it. It's like when Lane Kiffin was at Tennessee 10 years ago and was being the biggest horse's ass in the country, and everybody hated him, but Tennessee fans were like, nah, he's our guy. You shut up. We like him. And then he leaves them in the middle of the night for USC, and Tennessee's like, oh, we hate Lane Kiffin. This story happens everywhere. If he's your coach, you love him until you don't have to love him anymore. And that's like Tom Allen couldn't even see what Hugh Freeze was and spent 6 years with him. If he can't see that for 6 years, how is he going to interview a coach or even have a coach on staff and bring him in and make him you have no judgment at all. Is my point, Tom Allen, none. So go be a defense coordinator for somebody else because that's what he's good at. Go do that where all that energy and that rah-rah high school stuff, that works as defense coordinator. That is the exact template. Go do that because he's good at it and he can make a lot more money than I'll ever make. Go do that. But what's happening at IU is not working.
Yeah, if Kevin Wilson wasn't Kevin Wilson and Indiana was able to maintain him as on the offensive side with Tom Allen on the defensive side, this would have been fun to watch, I think, IU football, but that didn't happen. Not only that, if IU happens to get to a bowl game next year, because right now the Big Ten is really weak. It's very top heavy. You've got 3 teams that are top 5-7 teams, and then there's everybody else. And the best of the West sucks. Iowa couldn't score if you sit them down Broadway with a pocket full of $100 bills, man. But that's going to be the best. If IU and Justin Fuentes and Rod Carey somehow gets this team to a bowl this year or next, which I don't see it happening this year especially, but that extends Tom Allen's contract automatically.
Well, this is something I actually wrote a few weeks ago when they played out. Their best game of the year was that loss to Louisville, especially when you look at where Louisville was undefeated until last week. I mean, they hung tough with Louisville, and that was at that moment, in time, even with their losing record, you thought, or 2-1, whatever they were, you thought, well, they might have something here. And Taven Jackson looked good that day. And so that day I wrote, Taven Jackson looks good. He's the closest thing they've had to Michael Penix since Penix left, because Lord knows Tuttle wasn't, Bazelak wasn't, Grant Gellum or whatever. I mean, they had a bunch of guys at quarterback, Donovan McCulley, none of them. But Taven Jackson looks like he could be something like that. And so as I wrote back then, but are we going to be in the same position in 3 years? Is Taven Jackson going to win so much that Tom Allen gets to stay for 3 more years? And then when they lose Taven, they realize, oh, yeah, that's right. He's not very good. It's just a matter of who is his quarterback. If his quarterback is great, Tom Allen can win. If his quarterback's not great, he's not beating anybody. So I don't know if they're going to – I mean, if Taven Jackson becomes great next year, it's a great thing for him, but it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy for IU if that happens. I don't see it happening. In fact, I don't know if Taven will stay, although you only get 1 free transfer now in the transfer portal. You mentioned earlier about players leaving. IU had 23 players this year in the portal, and so their portal ranking is high because they've got just the volume. They're highly ranked. They got 23 guys. That's also a problem. What that means is you had 23 openings. You don't have talent on your roster. You better go get it from somewhere else. It's going to be the same thing next year. Is that they're not recruiting very well, so let's go get someone else's players. Well, there's a reason most of those players are leaving. They're not very good. So it's just a cycle. It's a vicious cycle.
Greg Doyle with the Indy Star. Make sure you are a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. I cannot thank you enough, man. Appreciate you very much. Great talking to you.
You're welcome, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Make sure go read those articles if you haven't. They are certainly worth it. Hey, we've got the Hall of Famer up next. Rick Bozich joins us from WDRB.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Thank you so
All
much,
right, Jim,
brother.
thanks for
I
having me.
appreciate you very much, man.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of your show. I enjoyed it. Talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye, Rick.
Hi, Greg. Bye.
Bye.
How about Kyle Schwarber, baby?
He's an animal, man.
I was thinking last night, Scott Rowland's in the Hall of Fame, won World Series, but he was a defensive bulldog and a good hitter. How many guys like Schwarber can make it into the Hall of Fame doing what they do? Because they're not known for defense, and this is actually a good question for on the air. And I don't know how good of what his average is. Most time home run hitters their average isn't good because they're either hitting it out of the park or striking out. But
yeah, I think he was hitting low 200s. He'd have to get over to 500 career home runs to get in the Hall of Fame, and that's probably not going to happen. We'll see.
But he's having fun right now, baby.
Surely he'll eventually have something named after him in Bloomington or a statue or something.
I'm sure they're hitting him up for some big donations too.
you would imagine. How about some NIL money for baseball, baby?
Oh yeah. The Kyle Schwarber, I don't know, batting complex.
I've only seen him at one
pavilion.
I've seen him at one basketball game. I haven't. Have you seen him there many times?
Never. I've never had the opportunity to meet Kyle Schwarber. I would love to get him on because you can tell, as are most baseball players, they're down to earth guys, man.
Yes, they are.
Baseball players are the most down to earth athletes. And I think it's because virtually everybody plays Little League Baseball. And it is one of the funnest times in your life. And if it's not, there's something wrong with you. I mean, I remember going all the way back to T-ball. And when they actually hit it off of the tee, which I thought I can still remember, oh God, this is great. You stand up there, buddy, and you're just, I'm going to kill this damn thing. And didn't always work out that way.
And they also deal with the media every day, so they're used to it.
Rick, doesn't Kenny Payne exhibition number 1 happen tonight for Louisville?
Yeah, I'm actually off this week, so I'm not going. So
okay.
It is tonight. Yeah. I went to the inter-squad game last week.
Well, thanks for coming on, even though you're off this week.
No problem.
All right, here we go, guys. 10 seconds.
And Chop Shop Steakhouse, Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, on this Wednesday. The great Rick Bozich from WDRB.com joining us now, as he does each week, and we are grateful for that. How are you? Are you enjoying the MLB playoffs?
Yes, sir. Looks like we got 2 juggernauts, Texas and Philadelphia.
What the hell is Philadelphia has just, it's like they've got Popeye on in every role over there. They got, you get a home run and you get a home run and you get a home run. And the funny thing is, all I was hearing about was Bryce Harper and Castellanos. And I may not be back in here tomorrow to fill this role, but there's a drive by Castellanos. Can't do it. I can't do it without every time. But our guy, Kyle Schwarber, just tied Reggie Jackson with 16 postseason home runs for the most in Major League Baseball history. And there's no way he's done in this. I won't say this series because they're probably going to sweep them, but definitely not in the playoffs. He's going to break that record and own that record, which that in itself is going to be an amazing thing to see a former Hoosier be the most prolific home run hitter in Major League Baseball history.
Yeah, I mean, he's got at least 4 games left because they're up 2-0 in the series. So even if they don't advance, he's got 4 games left. And if they do advance, he could have as many as, 5. He could have as many as 12 more games. So yeah, he's gonna get another one. He is a he's a beast. I mean, he's an animal. I mean, he just goes up there. And I don't know who it was who first got onto the strategy of batting him leadoff, because in older days he's more of a 4 or 5 hitter at baseball. But somebody decided put him in at leadoff hitter, give him as many bats as he can because he can hit home runs.
How wise, how smart was that?
And intimidate opposing pitchers.
You gonna walk the leadoff guy every time?
Right.
Nope. I mean, that was a very shrewd and smart move by, I assume, the manager or whomever made that suggestion to him, and he took it as his idea. But it's great. I think does he also own? He's got some record for leadoff home runs now, I think.
Yeah, I think he does in postseason play, leadoff home runs in postseason play. Pretty sure he does. No. I look back, that was the 2014 draft, I'm pretty sure. 2014 or 15, I don't remember which one, but 14. He was drafted 4th. A lot of people thought that was a reach by the Cubs, but it turns out he's had a better career than the 3 guys all drafted ahead of him. And he's been, I'm just surprised that the Cubs made the decision not to keep him when he became a free agent, and he went to Washington, I think, a 1 or 2 year contract, and they didn't keep him, and now he's at Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is they're like the Yankees, the old Yankees, and they're the ones who've bought up a lot of the better expensive players. Harper's a free agent, Schwarber was a free agent, Castellanos was a free agent, Trey Turner was a free agent, Zach Wheeler, their best starting pitcher, was a free agent, and they filled around him with other players, and they're fun to watch. I mean, I've read somewhere that the ratings are even up for baseball because people kind of gravitate towards Harper and those dudes because they got a little bit of flair about them. They got long hair. They have a good time out on the field. They're kind of like a slow pitch softball team.
That's but you're right. I mean, and I can see them pulling in a crowd because it's excitement. You don't know what to expect every night, but it has kind of become the norm. But this series has to travel to Arizona. Maybe that
slows them down.
Maybe the air. I don't know. It's a dry heat. I'm reaching. Not that I'm trying to slow them down, but it's like they're just pouring through. Now, they probably were expecting, and most people expected to see them playing the Dodgers, which is not happening, but they're just blowing through, and they're also peaking at the right time. They're just doing everything right at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 years in a row that Atlanta really was the better team during the regular season. This year by a very wide margin. Atlanta finished 14 games ahead of Philadelphia, and the Phillies, I think they embraced the new era of baseball. As you used to be, it was like one team got in the playoffs. Then there was 2 division winners, and now it's 6. And so you have to have a team that can win these short series, and with 2 really good starting pitchers and a third guy who's pitched pretty well, that sets them up and they can score runs. And you're right, they've hit a hot streak and off they go. And it's just amazing to think that Kyle Schwarber played baseball at Indiana University.
Well, they've also got a pitcher that's pitching right now. Daggone it.
Sal Frank, Andrew Sal Frank.
Yeah.
He's on the Diamondbacks, right? Left-handed reliever.
So isn't that ironic that they're actually playing against each other?
Yeah. I mean, it shows the growth in the program, and I think IU's expected to have a good team next year. They got a lot of their guys back and some decent recruits coming.
Yep, absolutely. Jeff Mercer does a great job with that program, and looking forward to it continuing. Trent Sisley, I just saw a tweet, which I'll be reposting, of him in his Purdue garb as he continues to make his visits. He is a very popular and wanted man, especially within the state of Indiana. Outside too, Iowa, Michigan State have offered.
Notre Dame's making a push.
Oh yes. Daggone it. Micah Shrewsbury, of course, originally from Jeffersonville down in southern Indiana. But he's just, I don't know if this is his last visit or if he has more, but obviously up at Purdue making the visit. Speaking of visits and commitments, Indiana had a major commitment this past weekend with Liam McNeely. That was their first commitment of 2024, but not just the first commitment. It was a large commitment. It was a commitment that came on national TV. So it was a kind of a big time deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of player Indiana hasn't really gotten for a while, a top 5-star recruit, not from the area. And people had criticized Mike Woodson, wanting to know whether he could go out and win these long recruitments. Well, he just won one. He's in on 2 more. I'm not sure how many of the 2 they're going to get. But if they can get 1 more, I'd say if you get 2 out of 3, that's successful when you're going after these kinds of level of players, and then you figure out the rest of the roster, whether there's some lesser ranked recruits you're still in on or not, or whether you're going to wait for the transfer portal or however you're going to do it. But yeah, Liam McNeely, I've only seen clips. I watched a little bit of the game Sunday night, but he looks like a guy who will fit in and play any style. He can shoot it better than any small forward I've seen at Indiana, maybe since Christian Watford, and maybe even a better shooter than Christian Watford. He's more of a who would it be? It'd been a
Brian
while.
Evans.
Brian Evans, yeah. Kirk Haston, one of those dudes. They can shoot the ball. He can pass it. He can handle it. He looks like a good player for the modern era of basketball. Kind of a
I never even thought about it. It just came out. He does remind me of Brian Evans. He doesn't have the body yet, of course, but and Brian played like a dozen years in the league, I think. So and he was a kid that came out of Terre Haute that was just and then boom. So yeah, those are the kinds of things. But he shot 45% from behind the arc last year. I know that was high school, but I don't care. 45%, dude. That's crazy.
Well, he shot.
Now there's guys that don't shoot that from the free throw line.
I think he shot 37 or 38% in the EYBL competition during the summer, which is the best of the best among high school players. So that's good.
That's real good.
When you watch him play, I mean, he's got the fundamentals down. He sets his feet, he squares his body, he follows through, he has his hands in the right position, he knows where the line is. I mean, he's been well coached. That's a big plus, and it extends the Montverde pipeline to another player, and that can be nothing but good for Indiana. If they can, you're not going to get them all, but if you can get your share, you're doing well. And you beat Kansas 2 in a row for a recruit, so I can't remember the last time Indiana beat Kansas twice for a basketball recruit. It's been a while. Probably some Bob Knight days.
This is not and these are not middling recruits either that say, yeah, we'd like to have him. No, they wanted Liam McNeely because they settled, and Rickese Passmore is a great player, I'm sure, but they immediately knew that they weren't getting Liam McNeely. And when Rickese Passmore committed there, I'm like, well, there you go. That just seals the deal for me, which I was already, 100% on board thinking that was going to happen. But then you can tell that to me that they're like, okay, we're waving the white flag here. Now, one that the white flag has not been waved on will come again this Friday. Boom, boom. The day of Hoosier Hysteria, which I'm not sure that was purposeful at all, because Boogie Fland has been waiting for his coach to return from a trip from Italy. He just got back, I think, like Sunday. So if Friday is the day he wanted to do it on, or maybe he did want to do it on Friday for Hoosier Hysteria, if it turns out to be Indiana, maybe just coincidental. But I do know that if that were to happen and they, bring that video or whatever up during Hoosier Hysteria Friday night, I may have to go outside for a minute.
Because of the noise?
Oh, my God.
You and Gucci Mane are going to go outside?
I'm going to be down with Gucci Mane. I got to get my Gucci Mane on, man.
I've heard this one keeps going back and forth. It seems to be 50-50. I've heard it both ways. He's going to, likely go to Kentucky. Indiana feels really good. I don't know. Could be the kid hadn't decided yet. He obviously needed to get away from it all because I think last week he cut it off and didn't want any more coaches coming in to talk to him. He felt like he had all the information he had needed and needed to get in decision-making mode. It seems like Alabama is no longer a school that people are talking about, so it comes down to Cal and Woody. So we'll see if he can win that one too. I don't know. It's tough to get a point guard away from Kentucky when he really wants him because Cal just rolls the tape of Derrick Rose and John Wall and Brandon Knight and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyrese Maxey. And
the difference is, weren't all of those guys projected to go to the NBA?
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander wasn't as highly rated as the rest of them, and he was first team All NBA last year. So that's one who really has blossomed. But yeah, most of the DJ Wagner, most of them Maxey, a lot of them were projected to be top picks. But still, I mean, when you can sit down, he's already talked about it before. When they come in for the visit, they sit down and show you the list of how much money all their recruits have made in the NBA and who they've done and where they've gone. And it's a powerful sales pitch. It's tough to say no to. So I'm not saying he's going to Kentucky. I'm just saying that makes this one in many ways a tougher one to win than Liam McNeely.
Yeah, but I think that something that Paul Biancardi said during Liam McNeely's deal, and it wasn't a reference necessarily to Boogie Fland, but that Jalen Hood-Schifino was not projected as a first-round draft pick. And that's definitely one of the things that Woody, I'm sure, talks about, in addition to guys like Carmelo Anthony who are talking to him and where he is dealt with. So I think it may be equal on those grounds. I think it's probably going to be equal at NIL. Indiana is not losing out at NIL. I think that this is just coming down to who he wants to play for,
right?
Who he thinks can, because he only wants to be in wherever, whether it's Lexington or Bloomington. He only wants to be there for 1 year.
Yeah, and who he wants to play with. I mean, I don't know what. I don't know the kid at all.
Well, Liam McNeely says his first call is going to be to Boogie Fland.
Liam McNeely did, yeah. I don't know what kind of relationship he has or how much pull he has. I would think he would have more influence with Derek Queen, but we'll see. And then Derek Queen is supposedly visiting Maryland this weekend. Isn't that right?
Yes,
so
that's his last visit.
Maryland, Indiana, and Houston, I guess. Those are the final three on him. Maybe LSU. I don't know. But
yeah, and plus Rob Cassidy was on, and he said that with Maryland has been kind of thought to be a lean. He's from the area, but more importantly, he said that he thought that Maryland may just throw the bulk of their NIL budget at him to try and land him, which that would be great for Derek. But that, to me, if you have to do that, man, because Indiana is they're not. It's costing some money. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're not throwing the bulk of NIL money to any particular player.
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems like these are the only three that they're really interested in at this point. They were a bunch more early on, but they've all gone different directions or been prioritized. Indiana's prioritized these three, or the other kids decided they wanted to go elsewhere, so it's down to these three. So I'm sure that whatever NIL money they have is going to be divided up between these three guys. And we already know McNeely's signed, so I'm sure whatever opportunities are out there for him, he is aware of, and now it comes down to Fland and Queen. So Friday will be, what time is it Friday? 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
2 p.m.
Yeah.
2 p.m. And my question is, all right, what if Indiana does not land Boogie Fland? Then what do you do then? Because you have to have, which they have Gabe Cups, don't get me wrong, but obviously they want an elite level point guard.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be Gabe Cups and somebody out of the portal, I guess, or you wait to see if somebody decommits from another school when a coach gets fired in the spring, or, you know, I don't know what other players are still out there that haven't been recruited. It'd be pretty late at this point to jump in on some other guys. You know, you always find somebody. There'll always be somebody who's available, but it's not going to be somebody with the recruiting profile of Boogie Fland for sure.
I think that they're in good shape, but Kentucky's in good shape. When it's this close, I've heard that it was a slight Indiana lean from a couple of guys I talked to. One from New York, Andrew Barth, will be on with us tomorrow. But that again, a lean. Lean doesn't mean a lot anymore. It's, I mean, if you're leaning, you can easily be pushed back the other way, I think. I don't know.
In today's day and age, I'm sure it's.
How much conversation is going on, do you think, right now, though, between the Kentucky camp, the Indiana camp, and Boogie Fland in this week? Or are they leaving him alone?
I don't think there's any with Boogie Fland. I would think there'd be some. I mean, these guys are allowed to have representation, so there's conversation, I'm sure, with their representation about, you know, and not from the coaching staffs. It's got to be from the NIL groups, I would think.
Well, no, I'm talking about from the coaching staff talking to him still.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like he has shut it down for the most part. I'm sure they can text him. It's up to.
I think his decision is made. He was just waiting for his coach to return.
Yeah, it sounded like it. So I don't know. We'll find out on Friday. It's 50-50. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 51-49. I'd give Kentucky a slight lead from what I've heard.
Well, I asked that question. Let me ask the other question. What if Indiana lands Boogie Fland and Derek Queen to go with Liam McNeely?
Oh, that's the best recruiting class in a long time. Like we talked about last week, maybe back to the 89 class of Calbert Chaney and Greg Graham and was that Funderburk and Pat Graham and a couple other guys in there. Now, somebody said might be their best recruiting class ever, and I'd have to say let's take a time out here because it's not better than Scott May, Quinn Buckner, Bobby Wilkerson, Jim Cruz, Tom Abernathy, 4 starters on an undefeated national championship team. And
people forget that.
They all played in the NBA, except for Cruz.
Yeah, people forget that, and then you go back to that 89 team. Calbert Chaney alone will become the all-time leading scorer in the Big Ten. Still is a team that one of the Indiana teams that definitely should have won a minimum of one national championship. Just didn't happen for whatever reason.
Henderson hurt his knee. That hurt him.
Yep, absolutely. They still almost did it. Leary almost got him there with those shots against Duke, man, but TV Teddy made sure to take care of that, fouling out 5 Indiana players. Crazy. Hey, we've got to take a quick break. The great Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us right now. Back with more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. I don't know if he'll like that one or not.
I'll be right back, guys.
I was going to say, well,
let me ask you this question. I don't have a subscription to the Star. I guess I need to get one. What did Doyle write? He said that it's $20 million, but it might be more expensive to keep him.
Yeah, is it worth? What's it worth? But
where are they going to? They don't have $20 million.
No, you. First of all, if they did have $20 million, if they paid him anybody $20 million to walk away, that would cause a riot. I think it's you don't make Indiana does not make Indiana football. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure that like Michigan makes around $6 million a game. I don't think Indiana makes that a year. So they don't have that kind of money. I mean, $10 million for Archie Miller. Well, somebody came up with that because A, it was basketball, and B, it was basketball. And then C, it was a manageable amount. But they're not losing. They're not going to lose. What money are they going to lose? They're not going to lose anything in football money-wise. Now, players, that's a different story. It has been just a nonstop of bad hire after refusal to fire and bad decisions. It has just been, I think that starting this year with Taven Jackson was the wrong decision because it was based on what it needed to be for the perception. It needed to be Taven Jackson. Too much that has gone on too long, and it just and I love Tom Allen. I can't say that enough. He is a wonderful, wonderful guy who has been great to me. And I wish it would work for him. It's not that I don't, but I can't sit here and lie. It hasn't. I think he is just what Greg said. What a great defensive coordinator he was. My God, if Kevin Wilson hadn't have done the stupidity of things that he did to get himself canned and would have had his offense and his defense. 4040, the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Appreciate you being with us as always. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us. Make sure you give him a follow for complete coverage of all kinds of great content, including the Hoosiers, the Big Ten, and even if you're maybe looking in on what Kentucky's doing or Louisville's doing, because Indiana stands a good chance of playing Louisville in basketball at the Empire Classic. I'm not saying that they will, but they open up playing against UConn, the reigning national champion. That's going to be a tough-ass game for Indiana to win. Let's be honest. If they do, great. If they don't, I'm assuming they will play Louisville, because unless Louisville has made a big jump from last year, Rick, Texas is probably in a little bit better position than Louisville is coming into this season, but I don't know much about either.
Yeah, I mean, it's safe to say that Texas has got more returning talent than Louisville has. So Texas will be favored in that game, and I would imagine you kind of be favored over IU. So it seems to be that they will play for third place on the Monday. Would it be like the 19th maybe of November, whenever it is, 18th, 19th?
19th and 20th.
19th and 20th. Okay. So yeah, that it seems to be we're heading towards that direction. And Kenny Payne and Mike Woodson are best pals. They work together with the New York Knicks. They talk all the time, give each other our grief all the time. So that'd be a fun game.
How ironic is it then that potentially they could meet in Madison Square Garden?
Be great. They both worked, and they're both friends with Tom Thibodeau and Worldwide Wes and the whole Knicks operation up there. So it'd be a big story in New York City, which is
what I missed. What about Worldwide Wes?
Worldwide Wes is like a administrator with the Knicks. He works for the Knicks.
Get the hell out of here.
No, he does.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know Worldwide Wes, The leader of recruiting for Kentucky in the early stages of John Calipari's tenure at UK. You can just look that up as Rick draws a nice chuckle from that. And I've got to point out, Dan Wetzel had a great piece. It's been a few days now on after the decision came down by the NCAA against Kansas.
Right.
What a ridiculous joke. They have finally just said, at least, well, in Dan Wetzel's article, it read that there was a side of the NCAA, the enforcement side, that was trying to enforce. Then there was another side who was saying, shh, no, we're good. It's like, do not ruffle the feathers of the geese that lay the golden eggs. And it could not have been proven more so. And it was kind of sickening to see Bill Self with that smirk on his face, knowing that he's a cheating son of a bitch and got away with it scot-free. And the people that don't understand why Duke, why Kentucky, why Kansas, why North Carolina remained dominant for so long, because they were all cheating. And it's been shown that they were cheating. North Carolina had 18 years of academic fraud. 18 years. Let's make our people go away.
The most interesting story I read was actually, I think, at Yahoo, also by somebody else who interviewed Merle Code, who was one of the Adidas representatives who lost his job and actually went to jail.
Those guys got screwed more than anybody.
And he was just saying, I went to jail to help you guys. There were recorded conversations between him and a Kansas assistant coach of what they needed to do and what they had to do to get Zion Williamson, who they didn't get, but it was like, yeah, whatever we need to do it. And he knew, everybody knew in the business. I mean, the guys that Kansas was getting through the years, you just don't get guys like that to the number that Kansas was getting them unless you're making it worth their while. I mean, how many IU coaching staffs have we talked to who always would talk about Kansas and Bill Self and how if you got into the recruiting ring with them, you were in trouble because they were going to do whatever it needed to be done to win, and they did so many times.
And no one's more outspoken about it than Tom Izzo at Michigan State. Mm-hmm. He's like, he was pretty open about it. Not a particular school, but Duke. All I have to say is Zion. Oh my God. Gee whiz. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? His parents go from an $800 a month rental home and wherever to a $5,000 a month home with an Escalade, a Mercedes, and something else. Get the hell out of here. But yet, why they just refuse to ruffle the feathers of the geese that laid the golden eggs.
Yeah. It's gotten to the point in my mind that the NCAA really needs to have a discussion about why they even have an enforcement division. They're spending all this money on this, and they don't get any results. They don't seem to have the will to get any results, or they're incompetent, or whatever it is. Why keep pretending? Nobody has any faith. What's the public's faith in the NCAA and its ability to enforce the rules? It's got to be close to zero, right? What's the faith of the coaches in what the NCAA can do in terms of enforcing the rules? Got to be close to zero. So at some point, I don't even know if there need to have rules at this point. I mean, anything, it sure seems like anything goes.
That's why Rick Pitino, I'm getting ready to put out, he wanted Louisville to fight like hell because he knew, don't self-report. You self-report, you get screwed. That Dan Wetzel article pointed out the people that got killed the most was Oklahoma State over some ticky-tack stuff. An assistant coach took some money from a financial planner.
Right.
Okay. That's it. They lost. They were banned from an entire season because of that. But all this crap that Kansas did,
Arizona beat the Rep.
Everybody beats the Rep, but
No,
not
you can
Indiana.
argue that the two schools over the last 15 years that have got hurt the worst are Louisville. What happened here, and they're self-reporting, and Indiana by self-reporting under Kelvin Sampson with making too many phone calls or sending too many text messages. And
a rule that was changed the very next year and made legal on top of it.
And in many ways, neither school is. Louisville certainly hasn't recovered. Indiana briefly recovered, but never really got back to what it used to be. So there's a lesson there somewhere.
Yeah, don't ever self-report to the NCAA and just fight them because they are toothless, gutless, and most importantly, worthless. Seriously, what is the point? But the worst part of all is they're governed by the stinking presidents of the universities, the majority of which are getting screwed. The only ones that aren't are the Dukes, Kansases, North Carolinas, and Kentuckys.
Right. Well, I mean, the world's changed now anyway with NIL. So a lot of the stuff that used to be illegal is no longer illegal. So
I think that went a long way in the NCAA saying, it's legal now, so let's not do it. Didn't think that way when they leveled, when Indiana had basically an entire team wiped out. Part of that was because Tom Crean got rid of some guys, but it was horrible. You've been on the road traveling, seeing some football, man. College football continues to be incredible. Michael Penix is a blast to watch, and Kalen DeBoer and those Washington Huskies. They've been my number one team. I don't know, man. Them in Michigan. Boy, would that be some kind of a hell of a game because Michigan's defense is unbelievable. Their offense is very solid, like machine-like, and Washington is explosive, and their defense is decent. So I don't know what a Michigan team is going to look like when they face one of these teams that is not a Big Ten team that has way more firepower than what they have faced thus far.
Yeah, I mean, they started slow against IU. I watched that game when I was up in Pittsburgh, and obviously Indiana outplayed them in the first quarter. Then the last three quarters, it was a total
only team to lead Michigan this year. They should have pulled a Lee Corso, says timeout, take a picture of the clock.
My only question about Michigan at this point is they really haven't beaten anybody. I mean, their non-conference schedule was weak. Who have they beaten in the Big Ten? Michigan State, Rutgers, maybe Indiana, one other one. Not Michigan State, Minnesota, I think they beat. So we'll see. They got to go to Penn State. They get Ohio State and Ann Arbor. Those will be the two games that you got three really good teams fighting for one spot in the Big Ten championship game. And this weekend is the first elimination game with Penn State playing at Ohio State. So we'll see how that goes down. Everybody talks about Ohio State and Michigan, but Penn State's pretty good this year. And we'll see whether this is the year they can sort of flip the script on the Buckeyes and the Wolverines.
Yeah, the Big Ten will be as always, lopsided. So, will anybody get two teams in? The SEC is definitely not getting two teams in this year. And let's say Georgia gets beat before the championship game, and there's the SEC teams don't have anybody that's undefeated. I know that there's no way because it's just written by God that the SEC must have a team in the college football playoffs, but they're not the best conference. The Pac-12 to me still is, even though USC is, they're gone. But Oregon still looks tough as hell. Probably should have won that game at Washington, but you still have other teams out in the Pac-12 that are damn good.
Yeah, I mean, considering the SEC's dominance of college football over the last decade, I'd be surprised if they don't get a team in. There'll just be one this year, but I think most likely the winner of the SEC championship game gets in. The Big Ten, I'd say, would be positioned to get two. Although the problem is that with the teams from the SEC East, the Big Ten East, you'd have to take a team that doesn't even get to the championship game. So
1 minute.
At this point, I'd say it's Washington, Michigan, Georgia, and the fourth one, Oklahoma, probably, right?
Yeah, but there's going to be gnashing of teeth this year, baby, of teams that don't get in. What's up next for you, brother?
Kentucky and Louisville are off this weekend, so I took the week off, so I won't be going to a game. Watch baseball, watch some other football, and I'll be back next week.
Oh, that means Eric Crawford doesn't have to drive you anywhere.
I did about half the driving on the way back from Pittsburgh.
I almost commented on your picture that I saw. I'm like, every time I see something, Eric Crawford is always driving.
Well, I don't take pictures when I'm driving.
I was just get ready to say I acknowledge that. Did you see quickly the response to the fight or clip you showed on the Dallas and the Chargers?
No, I didn't. What did it say?
Oh, it was from back in the day, man. The good old NWA wrestling with Jerry Lawler and all those guys. They had a fight that goes into the concession stand. It's worth a few minutes.
Well, that guy in LA picked up the pole. I don't know if he swung it at somebody, but
I was wondering. I thought the same thing. I'm like, keep the camera over here. We got to get out of here.
I posted one from the day before with the Bears. There was a fight in the upper deck, Bear fan on Bear fan. And then I read the Chicago Tribune yesterday that the police are doing like security video and they're hunting these people down and going to arrest them. So every day there's a fight at one of these stadiums. It's crazy.
Get over it, people. Get over it. Rick Bozich, make sure you give him a follow, WDRB.com and on Twitter. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
All right. See you next week. Have a good weekend.
Yes, sir. Big thanks to Dylan Sinn as well. Greg Doyle from the Indy Star for joining us today as well. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, of course, we have no reason to be here. John, for keeping us between the white lines. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.